Canada's Wonderland is the premier park in Canada. Located in Vaughan, Ontario, the Cedar Fair park has a good lineup of flat rides and an amazing top 3 coasters. Not to mention that this park has a great atmosphere and solid operations. I recently had the chance to check out Canada's Wonderland, so today I'll be ranking the coasters of Canada's Wonderland. Before we get started, I first have to note that there are 3 coasters on this list that I did not ride. 2 of them are clones I've ridden, and the other I'll be guessing based off what I see. Let's get started. Number 18. Flight Deck, a Vekoma SLC from 1995. Flight Deck? Yeah, more like Flight. This is a Vekoma SLC, a ride that is infamous for how rough it is. It's bad because of a combination of poor track work and terrible restraints. Plus, Vekoma back then made some horrible rides prior to 2002, I guess. I don't know. This was also my first SLC, so I had no idea what I was getting myself into. There is some theming scattered throughout, but that's not enough to have me coming back. And when it was all over, I felt like I got smacked in the head by a baseball bat. This is the first ride I truly hated by how much pain I felt. So Flight Deck, you. Moving on. Number 17. Time Warp, a Zamperla Volare from 2004. If Flight Deck wasn't the worst coaster I've ridden, then this would have been. Time Warp is not a good ride. Due to the poor track work and horrible cage trains, like seriously, what the is this? This janky piece of trash rattles you around everywhere. It was also made by Zamperla, which up until very recently did not make decent thrill coasters. So Time Warp, you. Moving on. Number 16. Taxi Jam, an E&F Miler kiddie coaster from 1998. This is one of 3 coasters I have not ridden. For this one, it's due to Cedar Fair's annoying policy of adults needing a child to ride. Luckily, I did ride a clone of it in Sea Serpent at Fun Spot Orlando, so I can judge Taxi Jam based off that. Taxi Jam is definitely the perfect starter coaster for children. Other than that, there's not really much else to say about it except it's a kiddie coaster. Number 15. Silver Streak, a Vekoma suspended family coaster from 2001. Not wanting the kids to be spared from the head banging comes this. Nicknamed the Hangin' Bangs, this is another coaster I haven't ridden. Mostly because I didn't feel like waiting 30 minutes for a ride I already rode in the now defunct Flying School at Legoland, Florida. Based off the one I rode, Silver Streak is an okay ride. But for a ride meant for kids, it should not be this rough. I imagine this one is more tolerable due to the restraints being further away from their head. Overall, it's okay, but definitely not worth the wait. Number 14. Bat, a Vekoma Boomerang from 1987. Boomerangs. A ride infamous for its roughness. Being my first boomerang, I heard horror stories about these. But to my surprise, Bat was decently enjoyable. Of course, that's not really saying much considering my expectations were bottom of the barrel, but still, I enjoyed the G-forces on the inversions, and it's nice going backwards sometimes to add extra thrills. But they need new trains for Bat. I'm sorry, but aero restraints are not good. Number 13. Snoopy's Racing Railway, an Art Engineering family launch coaster from 2023. The final coaster on this list I haven't ridden. I unfortunately haven't ridden anything similar to this one. The same reason for why I haven't ridden Taxi Jam also applies to this. So this ranking is purely off speculation. Based off the POV, it has more going for it than the other kids coasters. With a swing launch and sharper turns, this kids coaster is more unique than some others I've ridden. But until I can get on similar rides, this is where it will place until further notice. Number 12. Thunder Run, a Mach-powered coaster from 1981. One of 5 opening day coasters, this is a great ride for families. It's not too intense for little kids, and adults can appreciate the placement on the side of Wonder Mountain. However, for what it is not worth the 30 minutes I waited for this. Especially since it's just a more themed kiddie coaster. So while I'm glad to have this credit, I can't see myself ever riding it again. Number 11. Ghoster Coaster, a Courtesy Summers wood coaster from 1981. Another kids coaster at Wonderland, it's more unique for being a wood coaster. You don't always see wood being used on a kids ride. As a result, I could appreciate the ride more. But being meant for kids, this ride lacks any forces. That being said, Ghoster Coaster is something that's worth doing as long as the wait isn't too bad. Number 10. Fly, a Mach Wild Mouse from 1999. If you're familiar with the Wild Mouses at Legoland parks, this is a near clone. The difference between those is that Fly doesn't trim on the turns, meaning you get some great laterals. Plus, the drop at the start is decently good. However, if you've ridden other mice, this ride can get a 30 to 45 minute wait. So if you see the switchbacks for Fly being used, avoid it. Number 9. Mighty Canadian Minebuster, a Courtesy Summers wood coaster from 1981. Nicknamed the Spinebuster, this ride gets a bad rap in the coaster community. I rode in the front and was surprised by a couple moments of bouncy air time. However, there are two problems with Minebuster. One, the ride is crazy rough. I can't imagine how rough it is on a wheel seat or back of a car. The other is the bad pacing. Some parts of the coaster either run too slow or don't give any airtime. Number 8. Dragonfire, an aerodynamics custom looper from 1981. The park's original looper, Dragonfire, is seen as an outdated ride today. This aero looper is definitely underappreciated considering the coaster's brake run next door is taller than this ride. I also like the G's on the vertical loops. However, if you don't like the aero jankiness, be careful. If you don't prepare yourself, the janky aero track could mess with your head, especially in the second half with those awful aero over the shoulder restraints. Number 7. Backlot Stunt Coaster, a premier launch coaster from 2005. The best traditional family coaster is surprisingly the park's only actual launch coaster. This premier launch coaster has a good triple helix and some good theming. The ride experience is nothing to shout at, but Backlot is a zippy ride with some underrated forces. Unfortunately, the special effects on Backlot got nerfed over the years, so it's a shell of what it once was. Either way, it's no denying that Backlot is definitely the best themed coaster at Wonderland. Number 6. Wonder Mountain's Guardian, an art engineering and Triotech shooting dark ride from 2014. Guardian is one problematic ride. For one, this coaster has insanely low capacity, but also has some mechanical issues between broken guns and breakdowns. If you can bear the challenge to ride this, it's actually good. Okay, the coaster section is pretty much pointless, but after that it gets good. I'm a sucker for shooting dark rides, so this is right up my alley. But the best part is the finale. I won't spoil it here, but let's just say it'll shock a few riders who aren't expecting it. Number 5. Wilde Beast, a Curtis D. Summers wood coaster from 1981. The final wood coaster on this list is in my opinion the best of the trio. I just like the airtime on Wilde Beast more than that on Minebuster. While it's still rough, it's more tolerable than that on Minebuster, which is surprising considering how many turns are on this ride. However, Wilde Beast has worse pacing. A lot of the hills don't have any airtime, but more so is that it runs slow on the turns. I mean, look at this, like what the f***? Number 4. Vortex, an aerodynamic suspended coaster from 1991. It absolutely horrifies me that this was the best coaster prior to the Cedar Fair takeover. That's not saying that Vortex was bad. No, quite the opposite. It's just when your lineup is filled with this and this, Vortex will feel the best just because it doesn't suck. But to give Vortex some credit, this is one of the more aggressive coasters I've ridden. The strong positive G's and swinging makes Vortex a solid coaster. Of course, being a 90s aero, it's going to be rough in a couple spots, but compared to rides earlier on the list, it's not as bad. Now I would recommend riding Vortex as soon as possible, as it could possibly get removed given sister rides like Big Bad Wolf had bitten the dust. So Vortex with your strong swinging, stay strong. Number 3. Yukon Striker, a B&M dive from 2019. The most recent thrill coaster to be built, Yukon is the tallest and fastest dive coaster. A dive coaster is essentially a coaster with a vertical drop that hangs you at the top. Yukon also has my favorite layout of the B&M dives I've ridden. Of course, I like the massive drop in Immelman, but it's later in the ride that I like. The 0G winder, loop, and second Immelman pull great forces. And since the mid-course doesn't occur until near the end, Yukon has pretty good pacing. Now I know a lot of you dislike how Yukon Striker's vests take away any airtime. They personally didn't bother me as much as I could get somewhat good airtime on the 2 drops. Yukon is definitely the best looping coaster here, but I like airtime more than inversions. That's why I placed the next 2 coasters ahead of Yukon. Number 2. Behemoth, the B&M Hyper from 2008. Holy did Wonderland desperately needed this ride. This is the first coaster that was actually good, because Vortex is essentially just a family thrill coaster. Even better, this has an abundance of strong floater airtime the entire ride. Behemoth also throws in some strong positives here and there. The good news is that Behemoth's trims barely hit, or at least less than the last time I rode Mako. One con with Behemoth is that there's a very strong rattle in some of the valleys, so if you kept reriding, it's guaranteed a headache. But that strong floater keeps me coming back. Or let me rephrase that, it would have kept me coming back had not been for the number 1 coaster. Number 1. Leviathan, a B&M Giga from 2012. Because Behemoth was so good, Canada's Wonderland felt the need to build a larger Behemoth. Standing at 306 feet or 93 meters tall, this is the first B&M Giga coaster. The layout does feel short, and the joke that is the final brake run. Like seriously, why the f does a breakaway need to be that big? But Leviathan keeps me coming back because of the speed and power. There are few coasters out there where you feel the speed of Leviathan. While Behemoth has more airtime, Leviathan has stronger airtime, especially the first drop. Leviathan is also more low to the ground, feeling the full 92 miles per hour or 148 kilometers per hour. I do think the finale does weaken towards the end, but that first half is so good, smooth, and re-rideable, Leviathan beats out any coaster at this park. So that is my ranking of the coasters of Canada's Wonderland. What is your favorite ride at this Ontario park? And what are your thoughts about the B&Ms? Leave all that down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, which if you watched to the end it means you did, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like. Also, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. We have more content like this lined up, so you don't want to miss it. This is the Coaster Flood, riding out.